Grace.
And I'm Austin.
And welcome back to the Trial and Error podcast. Today is a very speculative episode because we're going to be talking about jobs, which of course we just finished 1L, so our only experience was what it was like getting a summer job for your 1L summer going into 2L. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about what that process looked like for us and of course our trial and errors.
So we're going to start talking about the basic time frame, what it looks like when you'll be applying versus interviewing.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about my experience with all of this and the general how it goes, and I'll let Austin fill in because I know that he put a lot more effort in than I did, so I'll let him explain if you actually want to be a girl boss what to do. But for me, the time frame basically begun when you start school. Law grades, people have different opinions. Some people say it really matters every semester, the grades. Some people say by far the most important and maybe the only important is after your first semester 1L because that's what employers will be seeing for your summer. I mean, I don't know. I think it is different for everyone. It depends on your trajectory. For example, let's say somebody made really good grades at the end of their first semester, got a job this summer, and where they have a job is where they want to be employed and they're making those connections. Yeah, maybe it doesn't matter as much what their grades are as long as they're doing fine for the rest of the time. But some people might want to try out lots of different things and their GPA is constantly going to be something examined because the people don't know them. So I think it really just depends, but I say that to say that this time frame begins with testing and doing well in school. We have a career center that really helps us out as far as figuring out what time to start applying to what jobs. I will say they don't have every job ever out there. For us, they let us know about, the local places and places they have connections with, and they're constantly trying to make connections with other firms, but Austin did a lot more outside digging than I did, and found a lot that we didn't know about just from looking at our career center. I'll let him speak on that, but of course that process of starting to just kind of look around, I feel like October, November. If you want to be a real girl boss, a lot of people, it's free to join, usually in your county, the bar association while you're a student. So a lot of people do that and meet lawyers that way and start building connections early. I think a lot of people, when I asked them their biggest regret of 1L year was not making connections earlier. So that's something really important to do. And then the interviewing, the applying, that all is kind of like winter break, really early winter, going into spring break. And some people just got a job, a couple weeks ago. So the flurry of jobs and interviews is really in the spring semester, but to prepare well for that, it starts in the fall semester.
Yeah, you explained that pretty well. Yeah, so for me, I didn't only stick to the career services website for jobs. I also looked up different law firms to apply to. There's this list called the AmLaw 200, which is the top 200 law firms by revenue. And you can sort them by a couple different things like revenue per partner or like partner profit per year or something like that. But you can look up major law firms like that and they will open their applications as early as December. And that was something that I didn't know. I was kind of frustrated with career services because they didn't let me know that these are jobs that you have the grades for, but because you're applying late, you miss out on half of them. I submitted 75 applications, I think, to these law firms. Maybe it was closer to 50, but I only got one interview. But if I was able to apply to the other 150 of them, I could have got 3 or 4 and had a bigger chance of getting a paid job this summer. But then there's also Simplicity, which they focus on local law firms. And then you can also just reach out to law firms. I know friends who got jobs just by going to the Contact Us page on a 6-person firm's website and say, hey, here's what I can do. Do you have any positions available this summer?
Yeah, so it sounds like you're saying that should really start. I mean, I feel like everyone in the world, including lawyers, do check out around Christmas, so you want to start getting that done right before Christmas time.
As soon as you're done with finals, I would start reaching out to people. And then also, like Emma Grace was saying, go to the bar association meetings. That was one thing I missed out on. I was only able to go to one, and then my wife got a flat tire, so I had to leave 15 minutes after I got there.
Well, I will say too, I'm very curious how this is at other schools. This is our perspective from UT. UT is a very good school, but it is a very good regional school. We're known at being kind of the best in our region. So, obviously because Austin did so well, maybe a firm in Chicago would be interested in him and that kind of thing, but that's just our career services isn't reporting that to us because they're really concerned with the region rather than a national level. So if you're interested in a national level, you're kind of on your own. But maybe that's not the case when you go to a Harvard kind of school and it's everywhere. I really don't know. I'd actually love to have someone on to talk about the job search at different schools, because ours was such a particular thing we went through that seems, I didn't even know that like bidding was a thing at other schools. I thought that was a UT specific thing, but it is. And by bidding, I mean we use this, it's not an app, a website. It's called Simplicity, and basically employers starting in December, January, February will say, hey, we're looking for this kind of candidate, whatever. You apply, and then they accept you. Like, they accept you for an interview. And then those interviews are happening in the spring. So I applied through that, which we call them OCIs, on-campus interviews, because they come to you and interview like 10 of you and your classmates, which is, side note, really weird because you know who's going for the same job as you based on who's all wearing a suit that day. I did not like that experience. Anyways, I probably applied to 5 or 6, maybe 7 of those. I got interviews with all of them except one, but I ended up canceling a lot of the interviews because I found a job. But yeah, that process really starts in January, February, and some people really don't like that. Some people really don't like how, they're like picking people from your school specifically, but you're all up against your classmates, and it's like they say what they want, you apply, and then they only pick a small pool of everyone at your school. So it's like sometimes it hurts even just to see people get picked for an interview that you couldn't even get in the door. That's probably my most annoying part of it, because I feel like I am a good interview and my scores are good enough that I feel like I should be given a shot. But a lot of them are like top 10% of the class only, or top 20 only. All the top 50 only, like top 50%, I got an interview. So
there was only one I saw that was top 10 only, and then most of them were top third, and a couple were top 50% in terms of like where you needed to be to land. And I've heard a lot from people who like don't meet that career services isn't particularly helpful to them during that like big rush season at the beginning.
Are you saying that they're not in the top half?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so for students that aren't in the top half in terms of grades, they have a hard time getting help from career services from like the class-wide emails. They have to go more to career services specifically in order to find help for that, and they wish that experience was better.
Yeah. Well, speaking of others' experiences, I feel like this would be a good time to explain what we actually did and where we're at now, and then we can kind of just talk more about what we like and what we don't like and how important law school, summer jobs are anyways. But just to give you perspective from us, I did a couple things. In the fall, there was a specific position I was really interested in that actually had to do with UT. And so I found out who was in charge of that, and I asked for just a Zoom conversation. I just wanted to see what they were all about and just learn about this kind of law because I had interest in it. And I met with 2 women, and they were wonderful. And afterwards, I immediately sent them both thank you letters for their time. At the time, they thought they would have a position that summer, but a 2L decided to stay in it because they really liked it, so they didn't have a position, which is fine. I'm still glad that I made those connections and learned what I learned. But I think a lot of people like to talk about what they do, especially when they like it. So it's always worth just asking someone for a conversation. And like we said, those bar association meetings are a good place to do that. Then, because I was like, well, that's probably not going to work out. And that was probably like November. I think that was right around Thanksgiving. I think on Thanksgiving break is when I talked to them. December, I really just worked on my resume and was like, well, I guess OCIs are what I'm going to be doing. And those open in right after New Year's. So I was just kind of vibing basically. And then I did those and I got lots of interviews. I only ended up doing 2 interviews. One, I did not get the job, and I almost wish like they would, with the whole OCI thing, if a firm is going to go through all the steps to come to UT, talk to UT students, we have this whole website. I wish there was a way to get like feedback on the interview, because I'd like to know why I didn't get the job. I love this firm. They're great, and I'd probably apply to them again, but I just have no idea why I didn't get it. And I'd like to know if there's something that I could change about my resume. But I will say that was my first interview ever for a legal position. I think I was nervous, and they kind of asked me questions, and it was questions where you're supposed to like talk, like apply it to how you'd be as an employer. And I kind of forgot. Like they were like, oh, so you worked at the writing center. And I was like, yeah, I love writing and reading. And they're like, what kind of books do you like? And I was like, oh, I like history and like fiction and romance. But I should have been like, and I feel like those skills and enjoying reading makes me really attentive at work. Like I should have like added, but I just kind of didn't because I got nervous. So maybe that was it. I don't know. I had a second interview with a nonprofit, so there'd be no money in it. And honestly, it's not common to be paid as a 1L because you kind of don't know what you're doing. You're really just getting experience in the summer. So I did one for them, and I just never heard back. But at that point, I had a couple more places I was applying, but I hadn't heard anything about interviews, and I started getting nervous. So I went to my good old tactic that has worked so well for me my whole life, which is writing letters. Old people love letters, okay? I'm telling you now, especially lawyers, they like the paper, okay? They like the signature, they like the good, like, you will not get through to a lawyer. Do you know how many emails a lawyer gets in a day? If you're like, haha, a job, they're gonna forget about you immediately. So I reached out to a couple lawyers that I knew, and I actually did email them and attach my resume saying, hey, if you hear of anyone like that's hiring, just let me know. One of those started to lead somewhere, didn't work out. But what I mainly did is I looked up all the judges around Knoxville because I was really interested in working in like actual court rather than a firm. I felt like it'd be easier to get a judge to let me sit around for a while than a law firm. And it worked for me. I think I wrote to 4 judges. All of them wrote back. 2 of them were open to having me as a job, and 1 asked me to come in that Thursday for an interview, and I was offered a job on the spot. Now, of course, my job's not paid, but it's a really, really good position because it's at appellate level, and who I'm working for is actually not old, and he's a really good guy, and I love everyone I work with, and I'm learning so much. So all I did, like OCI's simplicity, what people's websites didn't work for me, but letters did and always has. I've actually gotten 3 other jobs that way by just writing a letter saying I have this interest. So that is my piece of advice. And my biggest trial and error is for interviews. I mean, I don't know how to do better in an interview when you're nervous. Maybe try to interview with the law firm you care about less the first time, because I cared about this one the most and it was my first. So I think that just compounded. But now that I've talked nonstop, I will let Austin talk about how he girl bossed into his jobs.
So I am splitting my summer. The first thing I did this summer was I did a 1-week fellowship in Washington, D.C. with the Christian Legal Society. And that wasn't really work. That was going and just like thinking about philosophy and theology and the law and how all of those interact with each other. We talked a little bit about like natural law and whether or not we should be like trying to implement that through the judicial system. But basically, I spent a week doing that. And then the rest of my summer is going to be split between 2 different judges. I'm spending 4 weeks at a chancery court judge, and that's like the civil system. I think only 4 states still have chancery systems. Delaware is one of them, fun fact. So I'm working with a chancery court judge, which is a specific court of equity in Tennessee, among 3 other states, Delaware, Mississippi, and New Jersey. That is like people suing each other. I've talked to the judge a little bit, and he said a lot of the litigation that we get is divorces. Sitting in the office, I've heard the word divorce more than I have in the last week than I have in the last year.
Which is a good thing.
Yes.
Good to know your marriage as well.
Yes. A divorce with children in Tennessee costs $309, in case you were wondering.
But all these aren't like really, it's very rare to have a trial, right? Like
yeah.
with a jury.
So a lot of these are like ex parte, which means that the judge will just like listen with one of the parties there and be like, okay, and then we'll figure it out. So there aren't a ton of trials. And obviously we can't go into the details of the trials that I've been able to sit in on. So the first 4 weeks are with that chancellor. And then the last 6 weeks of my summer are going to be with a criminal judge. I have a murder trial the first week I'm there, and then that'll be a lot of also just like sitting in trials and then writing opinions. I'm trying to figure out like a property issue and whether or not parties are necessary. So if you're in class and thinking it's useless, it's not. I would have no idea what to do if I didn't take property or civil procedure. So pay attention. A lot of that experience is sitting in on trials, which I really appreciate as someone who wants to do litigation, just getting to see tactics that work and don't work and talking to the judge about what he likes attorneys to do and how like it's different if you're doing a bench trial with just the judge listening versus a jury trial, like how attorneys should act differently. Like, should they be more argumentative? And then I'm writing briefs, and hopefully I'll write a couple opinions this summer as well.
Yeah, so now let's talk a little bit about what the point is of a summer job anyways, because it is kind of unique in the sense that you, at least at our school, you're expected basically to have a summer job that has to do with the law, even if it is just shadowing for a couple weeks at a firm. You want some kind of exposure. And most people I know even if they're like literally making money this summer being a server, which is a total girl boss move because I'd be out here broke. They are going to be getting lunches with lawyers and that kind of thing and just expanding their horizons. I will say what Austin and I have in common this summer is we're working for judges, and so it's honestly a lot like law school, and it's really fine-tuning the skills that we have learned And of course, learning new subject matters. We're learning a lot of new actual law and statutes and how things work. But overall, the opinions and what we're doing day to day on Westlaw and researching and all that is really similar to school, as to where our friends at firms are like writing interrogatories and, going to depositions and doing things that we've never done or never talked about at school. And so I think that is something they're struggling with, is like the actual mechanics are very different. But maybe they actually know the law from school. I'm not sure. As for me, I'm learning so much about the law, but at the end of the day, I'm following the same format I did in school because I'm working for a judge. So if you want to learn those things during your summer, you got to work at a law firm. The pro of working in a law firm, of course, is that it's often paid, and you are not just making connections with a judge and a couple clerks, but a lot of lawyers that, they might not stay at that law firm forever. They could start their own and remember you and call you up, or they could be the kind of firm that's hiring associates right out of school. So you're making probably, I don't want to say better connections because everyone's journey is different, but like in the normal world, often it is a better connection and there is potentially money in it. I will say I got a scholarship, a public interest scholarship, so I am making a little bit of money in the summer, but I'm making like what they make in a week. So, well, I can tell you right now, freaking con of a firm is some firms you'll be working a lot. And for me, 1L took it out of me. I need to rest. I've been going to bed at 10 p.m. and waking up at 8 a.m. Like I am like totally, I cannot imagine having a week off and then going into working a 60-hour work week every week. Maybe Austin can. I'm just not, I don't function like that. And so I don't think I would do well in a firm that expects that much of me this summer.
I don't know anyone that's doing like 60-hour weeks. The friend I'm thinking of said he does about 45. They do a lot of like social events too. Like if you're interning at a big law firm, they want you to come back so that way they can work you 60 or 70 hours. They don't want to scare you away your first summer. So I think a lot of them treat you nice. Attorneys like it because it's like a break for them, so they're more friendly because they aren't also working 70-hour work weeks as much.
I think it's okay for everyone to have a different goal for their summer. My summer goal was to figure out if I like criminal law and can see myself doing it, or I don't like criminal law. And I'm learning that right now. And I took a, no pay and maybe not making as many connections with actual lawyers for this experience. Because at the end of the day, I saw 1L summer as making connections with people, but also figuring out what kind of law I'm interested in. So it's really different for everybody. Some people, another goal of theirs is money, in which case you need to work at a good firm, like a big firm that has money, or you need to be a server. There's just not so much you can do to make money in the summer. So it just really depends on your goals. So Austin is kind of different for me in that he's more firm oriented. I'm like so nervous a firm's going to listen to this one day. And I'm like, I actually do love firms. I'm not saying that. XOXO, you know who you are, Knoxville firms, please hire. No, but he was kind of aiming for a firm. I got the job that I wanted. I don't know if Austin necessarily got the job that he wanted. I know that he's enjoying his experiences, but I wanted to hear a little bit from him about how he's rectifying maybe some disappointment when it comes to the summer, how he's enjoying what he's doing now, and how he actually got to where he is now and what he would have changed.
So I was trying really hard to get a big law job this summer. I ended up getting one interview over in North Carolina, but I didn't get the job, unfortunately. I will be applying, though, so please hire me.
No bashing you, though, XOXO.
Like Emma Grace was saying, the OCI process helps you get some jobs. She didn't get any job. She didn't get an offer through that. But I, later in the semester, probably around March, interviewed with a criminal judge out in rural Tennessee. And I talked to him a couple times at the Knoxville Bar Association meetings like I was talking about. And he sold me working with him saying, look, if you want to get to know Tennessee, you got to come to a criminal court out in like the boonies.
So true. I'm not going to say where this judge is from, but almost every single day I read an opinion from out there because a lot of crime is happening with drugs in Tennessee, and drugs are made in rural areas in Tennessee.
Yeah, so you got things like that. Like I said, the first week I'll be there. We have a murder trial. But the thing that caught my attention the most was he did a case earlier this year about chicken fighting. I was like, oh, this is the part of the country we're in. And I think that's awesome. Like, I really want to, like, assimilate to Tennessee. So I think it'll be a good experience. Obviously not assimilating to the criminals in Tennessee, but.
Well, I will say we do have cities in Knoxville, and we do need more help with, like, inner city issues, which a lot of people aspire to do. But more so than that, like, Appalachian culture, people are like, I don't want to be around them, they're racist. Like, they don't even know because they've literally never been in a school. Like, it's some parts of Tennessee are real rural, and they do need some help with some legal issues like unfair housing and that kind of stuff. So it's important to assimilate to your state and figure out the issues in your state because it might be more than meets the eye.
That's the second half of my summer, and I got that job through the OCI process. And then the first half, I actually was talking with a professor, and he works for the state government, so he knows judges all over. And he referred me to a couple different judges to reach out to. And that's how I ended up finding my job working in the Chancery Court for the first half.
So both of us got jobs, so we're lucky. Both of us are not paid, so we're unlucky. And both of us got our jobs through a different avenue than just the on-campus interviews and through career services. So I think if I could go back and tell myself something, it's like when I gave up, when that one avenue didn't work in November, when I was like trying to network, I just didn't network again until March when OCIs weren't looking good, and I would just not give up the hunt for looking for other people to just get coffee with, just to learn and see if there's anything out there, because I had a lot of stress around like right before spring break of like, oh crap, the clock is ticking. I don't know how many more OCIs are going to be put up, and if I'm just relying on OCIs, everyone interviewing, I know them and they're wonderful, so it's like crap. Like the odds of me getting it are low. So I'm really glad that I did start networking again, but I should have been networking that entire time.
It's better to grind earlier because, one, you have finals later in the semester, but two, you also don't want to have to be stressing about, oh, it's spring break and I don't have a job. So while other people are doing OCIs, if your grades weren't high enough to be able to apply to all of those, that's when you should be working just as hard as they are, but reaching out to firms that didn't have OCIs. Like you can just look up firms in your town, send them an email and say, hey, don't say you're looking for a job this summer, but say, hey, I'm a 1L. I'm trying to figure out what types of law I'm interested in. Could we get coffee or lunch or something?
Mm-hmm. Or even better, I think I'm interested in what you do. Could you talk all about yourself? Because if there's one thing people like to do, it's talk about themselves. I'll be like, I won't be like, I'm interested in this kind of law, like only. I won't lie to them and be like, I have an interest in your field. Can we talk about your field? Mm-hmm. Rather than like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you give me some advice? More like, I want to hear about you and what you're doing. And that informs you, and that makes them like you. So There you go.
Like, prepare for those. Like, it's basically an interview. I mean, they're not necessarily going to send you jobs, but like, during an OCI, most employers are going to ask, well, what do you want to know about the firm? So come prepared with questions to ask them about what they do. Don't just expect them to talk and talk and talk, because some people don't do that. Like I can tell you what I do in 2 minutes.
Yeah, right.
And then we have an awkward 45-minute rest of our lunch.
Well, also it's like the resume. It's not like we've done a ton in the law yet. We just started law school and we're first gen. So it's like, I'm just here. Tell me about you. Mm-hmm. But yeah. So I feel like what we're really saying here, I just don't know about other schools and other people's experiences. So I just don't want to be like, this is definitely the case. But I would say that Austin and I, out of all the students in America that are currently in law school, are very lucky to have 1L summer jobs. But considering our ranking and how we're doing and everything, there is definitely better jobs in the sense of money and working with more lawyers to be had. I'm very, very happy with where I am. I think Austin's also very happy with where he is. He just will be maybe aiming for some of those jobs in the future. He's already getting ready for that, as to where I am smooth coasting this summer and just seeing what happens. So everyone's experience is different. I don't want to...
Yeah, we're recording this on June 3rd, and I've already submitted 10 or 15 applications for next summer.
I think total, out of all the letters and resumes that I sent in through OCI and the ones I sent through letters, it's like maybe 12. So everybody's different. And I don't want to diss, because I have great friends that are really smart and capable people that didn't get a job this summer, and they're still wonderful and would be amazing employees. I think a lot of it, unfortunately, has to do with your grades. Fortunately and unfortunately. I mean, grades are well-deserved, but the curve's a bitch, which we will be talking about
next week.
Look at that. Look at that. Okay. Well, I think that's really all we have. Do you have any other comments, Austin?
No.
Work hard, get money.
Work hard, start early, get to know people. That's the podcast in 15 seconds.
Yep, and it'll all work out. All right, y'all. We will be back next week. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Bye-bye.